I ask for your flexibility. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northfield. My name is Barbara Krause, and with my husband, Paul, have been members here for 7 years. UUFN is an inclusive community that nurtures spiritual and intellectual growth and fosters ethical and social responsibility. If you are a visitor, either on site or online, we are glad that you are with us, and we invite you to stay after the service to get acquainted. We welcome your questions and look forward to getting to know you. Later in the service today, we will take our Share the Plate offering as a way to care for the wider world. This month's Share the Plate recipient is Side with Love. Side with Love is a public advocacy campaign sponsored by the Unitarian Universalist Association that seeks to harness love's power to stop oppression. During the offering later, you may put cash or a check in the basket or donate online from our website, uunorthfield.org. If your check is for a pledge, simply write pledge on the memo line. There will also be instructions on the screen during the offertory time. Thank you for giving as you are willing and able. I call your attention to the announcements in your order of service on the back and also in your weekly email. There you'll find more information about the following. First, Reimagining Article 2 Reflection Circle that will be facilitated by Reverend Sarah. Join Reverend Sarah for a 4-session deep dive into the proposed Article 2 revision that updates the 7 principles with 6 values centered on love. No prior knowledge of Article 2 is necessary, and all are welcome. We will meet Saturday mornings in February from 10 to 11:30 in person right here at UUFN. Then on February 11th, that's next Sunday, there will be a presentation after church from the Building Vision Group. Please come for an update on the potential addition and the next steps in the process. A family potluck will be held at the Gerber's house. And where's Laura and Aaron? Yes, at your house. Wonderful. In Northfield on Saturday, February 10th from 5 to 7:30 in the evening. Please see your bulletin for all the details. Next Sunday's service is entitled Where All Thrive. The value of justice in UUism calls us to work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. Join Reverend Sarah as we reflect on what it means and what it takes for all to thrive. This is also a new member Sunday, so come and celebrate our new members. Again, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northfield. Now, this is where the prelude is supposed to come. So we'll just imagine this wonderful music, and maybe Paul's going to play something. I don't know. No. Okay. Poor guy, I have worked him so hard in the last 3.5 weeks taking care of this. It's unbelievable. But he got me dressed this morning, so that was a good thing. Okay, so our opening words are from another Barbara Coombs Lee, President Emerita and Senior Advisor of Compassion and Choices, which is the largest nonprofit organization in the United States. It is committed to improving care, expanding options, and empowering everyone to chart their own end-of-life journey. And here's what she says. Living well and dying well are inseparable. The ingredients are the same, and with courage and intention, a well-lived life can flow naturally into a death that honors it and reflects the values and beliefs of a lifetime. Come, let us worship together. Bob Peterson has graciously agreed to help this morning. Thank you, Bob. The flaming chalice is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Each Sunday when we gather, we bring this symbol to life together. Please join me in speaking the words for the lighting of the chalice. Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to learn what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. And the opening hymn is in your gray hymnal, 324. All right, yes. And that's what UUs are known for, making everything shine. So thank you. I think we should sing about 3 verses, and it would be, the first one is no light. Is this on?
I don't know. Test it. Yeah, it's on.
It's on. All right. So help me here. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Build all around the world. I'm going to let it shine. Anybody think of the third verse? Everywhere I go. I like that. Okay, so we will do in that order. This little light, building up a world everywhere I go. Okay. I guess I'm just going to have to pick a. Thank you. Here we go. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. All around the world, I'm gonna let it shine. All around the world, I'm gonna let it shine. All around the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. How about building up a world? Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Give yourself a hand, that was great.
It feels glitzier already. I love it. Thank you. Thank you all. For the joys and sorrows, just shortly here, I'd like everyone to breathe deeply first. If you want to close your eyes, that's fine, otherwise not. The idea is to let go of all the thoughts that are maybe bothering you, and just feeling spaciousness. I invite you to allow yourself an unhurried breath. Relax your shoulders. Inhale and exhale. And let your heart catch up with you in this moment. Rest in the embrace of a wider love. And once again, breathe deeply. In the presence of this love that holds us all, we use our chalice flame to light our candles of community. We light our first candle as a blessing for the wider world. It is deeply troubling to witness the escalation of violence sweeping across the globe. This flame represents the sorrow in our hearts for all those who are affected by this violence. Our hope is for peaceful resolutions. We know, too, that the details of our daily lives are sacred and important. We now light a candle for all the simple joys that are sustaining us. And we light another candle in honor of the sorrows and hardships we might be carrying. Hearts, but that have not been spoken aloud. And we move into a time of silence. May the truth of your heart be reflected in these flames. Amen and blessed be. And now we're going to do Spirit of Life. I'm going to have to ask Bev for her help again, please. I haven't been to choir either in 3 or 4 weeks because of my energy. But we will have what we need right now. Thank you, Bev.
We all know this one, right? Anybody would give me a note? Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart of the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Thank you. Our reading today is from an October 2016 statement from Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Emeritus of Cape Town and a Nobel Peace Prize laureate. It is titled, When My Time Comes. Archbishop Tutu died in 2021, and he is one of the first notable people to choose to have aqua cremation as his form of body disposition. Here is his quote. Throughout my life, I have been fortunate to have spent my time working for dignity for the living. I have campaigned passionately for people in my country and the world, for their God-given rights. Now, as I turn 85 on Friday, with my life closer to its end than its beginning, I wish to help give people dignity in dying, just as I have firmly argued for compassion and fairness in life. I believe that terminally ill people should be treated with the same compassion and fairness when it comes to their deaths. Dying people should have the right to choose how and when they leave Mother Earth. I believe that alongside the wonderful palliative care that exists, the choices should include a dignified, assisted death. We will now take our offering. Our offering is one way we make our care for the world tangible. This month, our Share the Plate recipient is Side with Love. Side with Love, again, is a public advocacy campaign sponsored by UUA that seeks to harness love's power to stop oppression. It has 4 advocacy campaigns. First, create climate justice. Second, UU the vote. Third, uplift action. And 4, love resists. You may donate by cash, check, a check made out to UUFN with offering basket in the memo line, or online from our website, uunorthfield.org. You can scroll down to the bottom of the homepage for the link. We now gratefully accept the offering. I thought maybe Reed would hum. Harlan just said it's kind of like a Quaker service.
Always looking at the positive.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Reed and Gail. Today we welcome Reverend Harlan Limpert. Harlan is a UU minister, former Chief Operating Officer of the UUA, and co-founder of Interfaith Clergy for End-of-Life Options. Its mission is to promote understanding and acceptance of the diverse spiritual beliefs related to end-of-life decisions. I met Reverend Limpert, Harlan, last October at a Compassion and Choices gathering. And I was just so impressed with his compassion, his energy, and just willingness to be there for everyone he met. I felt like he was listening only to me when we talked, and that is a gift. So I'm very pleased to be here, have him here this morning with us. When he has finished his presentation, we will have a 5-minute Q&A, or possibly 25-minute, because looking at the time, you just, and so we will have that. And I think in the moment, you know, keeping your questions together, but then being courageous to ask them. Okay, so welcome, Harlan Limpert. Thank you.
It's very kind of you to say that. When we first met, it felt like I was talking just to you. I was given that compliment one other time. It was said in front of my wife. Someone said, you have such wonderful listening skills. And my wife looked and said, what? He doesn't hear me at all. He doesn't listen to me at all. So maybe it's context dependent or something like that. Well, in my role at the UUA, Unitarian Universalist Association, I'm aware that perhaps not everyone here is a member of this congregation or necessarily knows about the UUA. It's a larger association that we are a part of. In my role at the UUA, I had the pleasure of visiting over 100 UU congregations around the country. Some of them were 10 or 15 members. Some of them were 2,200 members, and everything in between. And I have to tell you, when I first walked into this building, I loved the energy that I was feeling from the very, very start. It really says something about the excitement you folks are feeling and about the congregation. And when I talk to people, it sounds like there's a lot of really good things going on here. So You are very fortunate to be a part of something that's bigger than yourselves, that is, I'm confident is going to make an impact on the world that is greater than any one of us can alone. I want to tell you a story. It's kind of a sad story, to be honest with you. A dear friend of mine died 31 days ago in Vermont. Her name was Linda Bluestein. The cause of death was ovarian and fallopian tube cancer. I knew Linda because she was a very active person in her home congregation, and she was an enormously active and effective volunteer for the UUA. In many ways, Linda's end-of-life journey was like many others. From the moment she was diagnosed, she did all the things that one does when one is diagnosed with some awful disease. She had surgery, she had radiation, she had chemotherapy. But after 2.5 years of treatment, it became clear that the cancer was not going away and that Linda was going to die. The common trajectory of someone in this situation with a terminal cancer diagnosis is to receive palliative care and eventually hospice care that will help to treat the symptoms and achieve the best quality of life until the end comes. And at some point in time, of course, the end does come, as it does for all of us. Sometimes those ends are relatively easy, and sometimes, as we all know, they can be enormously difficult. I suspect most of you in the sanctuary have had exposure to both kinds of extremes. But this is where the end-of-life journey that Linda had became different from what is the norm. Linda had a heart-to-heart conversation with her physician at a certain point in time of her treatment. And I want to quote to you directly what she said. She said to him, "I want the right to have a say in the timing and the manner of my death when I reach the point where my disease or the pain and suffering it causes robs me of the quality of life that is essential to me." She went on to say, "I have witnessed bad deaths, my mom's and my dad's. My mother, who also had cancer, died in my arms in a too large hospital bed. For five years after that, I sat by the bedside of my dad when he died and went in and out of consciousness. Neither of my parents wanted their precious final hours to turn out the way that they did. And I don't want that either." She went on to say, and she said this, from what I understand, with the same intensity of purpose that she was known for. She said, "When my end comes, I want to leave this world on my own terms. I want medical aid in dying. I want to take a pill or drink a liquid that will enable me to fall asleep and die peacefully shortly thereafter. I want my family surrounding me." That's the end of her quote. Her doctor, very fortunately, was sympathetic. And, fortunate for her, her care was being provided in a state that has medical aid in dying, something that I'm going to describe and define a little bit more clearly in just a moment. The doctor gave Linda a prescription for medication that would end her life. Linda had the prescription filled, and when the time seemed right to her, she consumed 3 ounces of liquid that led her to become unconscious within just a few minutes and ended her life within the hour. When Linda died, she was surrounded by her husband, Paul, her daughter, her son, and 2 of her 5 grandchildren. She was in charge of her life right up until the end. Recently, there's been a lot of conversation about medical aid in dying, and I'm guessing that as recently as the last 4, 5, 6 days, You may have read something in the Star Tribune, if you get that paper, or some other publication about medical aid in dying. It's a practice that's sometimes known as physician aid in dying or simply aid in dying. The concept or the practice gained prominence under the name of death with dignity 24 years ago in Oregon. I think almost everyone is familiar with the death with dignity movement in Oregon. However, the term death with dignity has fallen out of common usage, and for good reason, and has largely been replaced by the term medical aid in dying, and it's abbreviated MAID, M-A-I-D, MAID, medical aid in dying. So let me tell you what it is in case you're not familiar with it. And I know Barbara and others have had a workshop fairly recently on this, so some of you may be more familiar than others with what medical aid in dying is. Medical aid in dying is a practice in which a terminally ill adult with decision-making ability may ask for and receive a prescription medication that they may self-administer to achieve a peaceful death if their suffering becomes unbearable. Now, every single word in that paragraph is important. Medical aid in dying is a practice in which a terminally ill adult, and what that means is a person for whom a physician has said you are likely to die within 6 months. That's the definition of terminal illness. With decision-making capability, meaning they know the consequences of decisions that they make, and particularly medical decisions that they make, may ask for and receive a prescription medication, something one would typically not do, ask for a prescription medication with the deliberate intent of ending one's life, that they may self-administer, take by themselves, not be injected, not force-fed or anything, but self-administer to achieve a peaceful death if their suffering, either existential suffering or physical suffering, becomes unbearable. I'm speaking to you because the Minnesota legislature today has before it a bill that's called the Minnesota End-of-Life Options Act that would, if passed, provide an option to Minnesotans who choose it. It mimics the death with dignity law from Oregon with some improvements that make it even better. The legislation has been introduced each year since 2015, so 9 years now, and it's going to be introduced again later this month. And we have a real possibility that this legislation can pass this year, but only if the legislators know how strongly people are in support of it. And people are in support of it. Surveys conducted in Minnesota make it clear that the vast majority of Minnesotans, and frankly, the vast majority of Americans, are in favor of medical aid in dying. 73% overall. In this political climate, there aren't many things that everyone will agree with, 73%. It's among Democrats is 87%, independents 76%, Republicans support medical aid in dying at 52%, and the percentage of Minnesotans in the rural areas of Minnesota, the what do they call it, the greater Minnesota, support it at the exact same percentage as people in the metro area. That doesn't always happen, but it's 73% and 74%. That's quite a remarkable statistic. People of faith support medical aid in dying. I've organized this group called Interfaith Clergy for End-of-Life Options. 6 Protestant denominations and Reformed Judaism gathered together to say we want people to have their end-of-life decisions informed by them and their own spirituality. MAID is now legal, and this is important to understand. MAID is now legal in 10 states and the District of Columbia. The good news is that that means 22% of Americans live in states where this treatment is available to them. The bad news is that that means it's not available to residents in 40 states and uh, 40 states and 78% are not eligible for medical aid in dying. So you might wonder, with all of this support that I've quoted, why is the legislation not passing? It's not even getting out of committee until recently. Well, do you want to make a guess of why it's not getting passed, why it's not making progress? It's very much like gun safety legislation and very much like the issue of a woman's right to choose what happens to her body. It is that the vast number of people in American society support this option, but the political leaders and often the religious leaders object to it. And they object to it with a lot of noise and with a lot of activity. When a hearing on the legislation took place 8 years ago, the opponents to medical aid in dying outnumbered the proponents by at least 3 to 1. And they showed up at the Capitol in person, and they had on red shirts, and they communicated to their legislators, we don't want this. Now understand, it's a minority of the people, but they made themselves visible. So it really kind of startled and scared the legislators. As recently as 2 weeks ago, there was another hearing. Did anyone go to that here? It was at the Capitol about 2 weeks ago, and the proponents of medical aid in dying supported it by a ratio of 2 or 3 to 1. So we really overwhelmed them with our yellow shirts. And it makes sense that Unitarian Universalists would support and be enthusiastic supporters of this legislation. The very first medical aid in dying bill, which I've mentioned, Oregon's Death with Dignity law, was literally drafted in the annex of the First Unitarian Church of Portland, Oregon, a place where I did my internship 130 years ago or so. Congregants gathered on Sunday mornings and oftentimes at forums during the evenings for years, saying that we need to have this kind of law. If you want to take a look at the spring 2016 issue of UU World, how many people get the UU World magazine? It's a publication of the Unitarian Universalist Association. If you look at the spring 2016 issue, there is a marvelous article about the role that the First Unitarian Church of Portland, Oregon had in passing this, in literally drafting the legislation in that church. It's a fascinating history, and it's also notable that the only denomination, religious denomination in America that officially supports medical aid in dying is the Unitarian Universalist Association. And they did it in 1988, 9 years before Oregon's Death with Dignity law was passed. They did it at the annual General Assembly, where members of our 1,100 congregations get together in one place, and they vote on resolutions to say, this is what we want, this is what we support, this is what we're fighting for. So let me tell you why I, as a Unitarian Universalist minister, support medical aid in dying. And I tend to categorize it in 3 kind of buckets. The first is societal. In my ministry, I have seen too many people suffer needlessly. You know, and I was a chaplain for 2 years, so I had pretty good exposure to this. Advances in medical technology in the past decades is a wonderful thing. It has enabled Americans to live longer and live healthier lives than ever before in history. Think of it, more time with family, more time with friends, more time with fellow church and fellowship colleagues, more time if we're fortunate with children or grandchildren or sometimes even great-grandchildren. It is a wonderful, marvelous blessing. But medical technology has advanced to the point where our lives can actually be extended longer than we may want. 1 in 3 of us will have some sort of dementia by age 85. We may get a pacemaker or be force-fed or have a feeding tube inserted to keep us alive, even if we have advanced dementia, unless we take action, unless we take charge of our life to prevent that. So often the medical technology, the treatments that we receive actually don't merely extend our life. What it actually does is extend our death. And that's a very different thing. While 70% of us say that we want to die at home, the reality is that only 30% of us will. The rest will die in some sort of institution. One of my favorite cartoons, if you can imagine a cartoon on a serious subject like this, one of my favorite cartoons is a doctor talking to a patient, and he says, "Sir, you've got 6 months to live, but with appropriate aggressive treatment, we can make that seem much longer." You can imagine that, can't you? The availability of medical aid in dying can provide an option to those who wish to avoid overly aggressive medical interventions at life's end, and it can avoid unnecessary suffering and enable peaceful deaths like the one that my friend Linda had. There is enough suffering in the world. Why should we add to it? The second reason I support medical aid in dying is theological, and you folks will relate to this, I believe. It's reflected in the first principle of Unitarian Universalism: respect for the belief in the dignity and worth of every human being. I maintain that to truly respect someone's dignity includes supporting their right to make decisions about their own end-of-life care, about their own bodies. How can we say that we honor the dignity of a person if we deny them control over their own final journey? Treating someone with dignity means acknowledging a person's humanity. It means recognizing them as someone who has intrinsic value as a person that deserves to be respected, who deserves to be respected. It means valuing their autonomy. And we hear a lot about autonomy now, don't we, in terms of personal health issues. Believing in the dignity and worth of every human being means honoring an individual's right to make decisions that affect their own end-of-life care and exercise control over their own body. As the little blurb in the website said, I'm amazed that people who have spent their entire lives planning and controlling everything about their lives that can be controlled, oftentimes at the end of their life, hand over their medical decisions to someone else. And that someone else often is not a loved one. Oftentimes it's turning it over to the medical establishment, who have been trained, God love them for what they do, but they've been trained to keep, one more procedure, one more surgery, one more medication to extend life, sometimes more than we want. Honoring the dignity and worth of every human being means showing compassion. The commonality of every world's religion that I'm aware of is that of compassion, honoring the wishes of others, respecting their right to decide for themselves what is best for them, given all the circumstances of their own life. It is understanding the human condition in general and a person's particular situation around those choices. A ministerial colleague of mine said it best, I think, when he said, quote, "The primary reason that people seek aid in dying at the end stages of a terminal illness is because it assures them that they will maintain that human dignity as their life winds down. Our dignity lies in our ability to make choices about our destiny. When choice is denied, dignity is denied." The third reason I support medical aid in dying is personal. I'm actually not 150 or more years old. I'm 73 years old, and I look ahead and I imagine my life. certain selfishness about it, I guess you'd say. I joke that I hope, I hope that I die, excuse me, I hope I don't die right now. Hang on. I'm okay. I joke that I hope that I die pushing a child out of a pathway of a runaway truck, and that photos of me are in newspapers all over the country. But the truth is, statistically, is that I will probably get some illness at some point in my life, and I will do what everyone else does, fight it as long as I can. And at a certain point of time, I'll lose that battle. But when I'm at the end of my life, I want the right to have my end of life desires honored. I want the option of a peaceful death. And this is what medical aid and dying would do. Excuse me. Where are those cough drops you mentioned? Now, I'm assuming that most of you are pretty much in alignment with me. I talk to a lot of groups where there's not the, perhaps, I really don't need anything, I'm sorry. You are too.
We have plenty of time, Harlan.
Take, eat, this is my body given to you. How many were brought up in a more traditional religious faith? Okay. About half, raise your hands again. About half, okay, yeah, so you understood that little quip, right? Okay. I'm sorry?
It's a good one.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm assuming that most of us are in support of this because we're Unitarian Universalist, and we oftentimes have thought about these issues perhaps differently than people in certain other religions or certain other cultures. And if you are not supportive, I want you to know I respect that. Don't agree with it, but I respect that, and I'm willing and open to talking about that. In just a moment, we're going to have a 5 or 6 minute question and answer period, and then I'm going to hang around after the service, and we can meet in the back of the sanctuary here and talk about it some more, because I really am interested in the questions that you have that are directly related to this. But let me tell you what I'm hoping we can do, both individually and collectively, if you wish to honor bodily autonomy, choice, and the right of people to choose their own ending. The first thing I really want you to do is contact your state representative and your state senator. This is a state issue, not a federal issue, so don't write or call Amy Klobuchar or Angie Craig or Tina Smith. The people you should contact if you live, really close to the church would be, from what I understand it, Christy Purcell. She's your representative in this area. Kind of a funny district map, if you're familiar with it. Or Bill, I think it's pronounced Liskey or Liskey?
Whiskey like whiskey.
Liskey? Okay. Your senator is Liskey. So let them know what your position is on this issue, because you can be sure that the people that are against this are contacting them and letting them know what their position is. So that's the first thing I would ask you to do. And I would say, there will be another hearing, and Barbara has offered to organize some sort of carpooling arrangement, or maybe renting a van, a minivan or a regular van, or even a bus, depending upon how many could do that, where you actually physically show up to the hearing and show your support wearing a yellow shirt. The second thing I would ask you to do is share your conversations about this topic with your friends and your family members and your legislators, and tell them stories. We don't have time at the moment to get into this, but I'll bet every single one of you have a story that you've had, a friend, a relative, someone you care about who has reached the end of their life, and they've either had a good story or a tough story. And share those stories, because they can be very persuasive in changing people's minds. Remind them, the legislators that is, remind them that the majority of Minnesotans and the majority of Americans want this, and that you're committed to having their backs if they support this. Point out that this is entirely optional. You know, this is just an option. We're not promoting anything. We are simply saying, let's make this option available to people who choose it. And it's important to note, no physician has to participate, no nurse has to participate, no medical complex or association needs to participate, chaplains don't need to participate, no one has to, and obviously patients don't have to participate unless they want to. So it's purely optional, like something else we know about, right? And so remind them of that, because I think that's persuasive. And then the last thing is, remind them that, because some of us had, you know, I can tell you that 20 years ago or more, I had concerns about this topic. And I think they were legitimate concerns because it was about, well, will this be misused by insurance companies or by grandchildren who are interested in the estate of their grandparents, or us, or someone else? Will it be misused? The good thing is now, thanks to Death with Dignity in Oregon, we have a combined 100 years of experience among the 10 states and the District of Columbia, over 100 years of experience. And there's never been a verifiable case of abuse of any sort. So we know it's okay. Hesitations about that can go away, because there's just been no, there are so many guardrails, thank you, guardrails in place that it's just not been abused. So I want to end by saying this. I am still grieving the loss of my friend Linda. But I am celebrating the fact that she had exactly the kind of end-of-life journey that she wanted. I point to the quote that Barbara actually quoted a little bit earlier: living well and dying well are inseparable. The ingredients are the same. With courage and intention, a well-lived life can flow naturally into a death that honors and reflects the values and the beliefs of a lifetime. And everyone in Minnesota and everyone in the country deserves this option. May it be so, and amen. I'm aware, at least I hope, there's a million questions that you might have, or even comments you might have, and I would be wide open to those for about 5 minutes? 5? Okay, 5 minutes. We'll say 5 minutes. Yes, please. And oh, you've got the microphone. That's great. You know, there's so many little things your fellowship does that invites inclusiveness. You know, I walked in and I saw right away you've got the lift that enables people with mobility issues to get up here. I mean, they're not really little things, they're big things, but they're oftentimes things that are ignored. Excuse me, go ahead.
My name is Kamisha Wynn. I just want to thank you for your presentation today. I wanted to make sure I asked my question because I have 3 kids who'll be up here in a minute and they'll go crazy. So, okay. My husband actually works in palliative care, so I'm not sure if you are familiar with Torrey Fields, so Torrey Fields Analytics. So he's a co-founder of a tech startup in palliative care. He's actually home right now working on something that's getting presented to somebody that's going to be presented to the Senate, US Senate, I believe, tomorrow, for a palliative care something. I tune out a lot of what he says, sorry. So the reason why my question for you is, since I cannot stay long, if we can somehow connect because of my husband's work.
Oh,
so
I'd love to.
Okay.
How could I, let's see, I'll share with Barbara. Barbara already has my contact information because we've been in communication. Check with Barbara. I'm wide open to phone calls and wide open to emails. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for that. Absolutely. Yes, sir. And we'll get the microphone over to you.
I would like us to notice that we live in a country where we can have a discussion like this.
All right, that's very important to remember. Very important to remember right now.
Why do you think that this kind of issue did not come up 50 years ago?
I can tell you at least one reason, and I'm sure there are many. The term that the opponents use around medical aid and dying is physician-assisted suicide. And boy, when you say the word suicide, that grabs people in a really hard, tough way for a number of reasons. One is a lot of us have had someone in their family die by suicide. And so it oftentimes almost stops the conversation. But I can tell you, medical aid and dying is not suicide. And that word suicide should never be used in connection with this. People who die by suicide want to die. People who use medical aid and dying want to live, but the disease is killing them. So that's one of the big differences. So I would say that's one of the reasons. I think the other reason is the religious leaders had more authority in at least some denominations, not ours, but in some denominations, the religious authorities, and if your pastor or your priest said this was bad, and they oftentimes argue, even today, they say, God gave us life, only God could take it away. And I always respond and say, God gave me bad vision, and I got eyeglasses so that I could see better. I feel okay trying to improve upon God's, creation. So there's a whole bunch of religious resistance to that. But it's a wonderful question and well worth more pondering. Thanks for that. Yes. Here's the mic.
Okay, I don't think I need it. I'm a lawyer, so I gotta project in court.
But some of us have, hearing
Okay, hi.
needs. Thank you.
So I am a lawyer, and so that kind of begs my question here. So I went to law school in 2018 through 2021, and we studied this in constitutional law. And my understanding was there is no right to die under the Constitution as the federal court sees. So I didn't know that it was legal. Like when you say legal, I think that's questionable, correct? Like in the states such as Oregon and the other
When I
states.
say it's legal in these 10 states in the
Yeah.
District of Columbia,
Yeah,
yes, it is legal in those 10 states in the District of Columbia. The federal constitution has been interpreted as not guaranteeing a person's right to this sort of medical treatment. But in states, sometimes by resolution or petition, sometimes by a court order. I think in Montana, which is one of the states that has medical aid in dying, I believe their decision was, the court said that the government has no right to tell people what they can and cannot do. It's kind of a independent sort of libertarian kind of interpretation, but it is legal in these various states.
and the other thing I just had to make a comment, this isn't so much a question, but if you.
Microphone a little closer, please.
If you are considering this.
Okay, there we go.
If you are considering this, you should, I'm not trying to plug my law firm here, that's not what I'm doing, but you should consult with an attorney because there could be like a life insurance policy that could be issues if they consider that.
Wonderful thing. In the law that's being proposed in Minnesota, it specifically states that someone participating in this treatment insurance companies cannot deny insurance. They cannot deny life insurance. If you follow the protocols and the rules and so on, you can't be charged with, the doctors can't be charged with assisting a murder or anything like that. But really good point. Lawyers almost always should be involved in big decisions like this. Thank you. One more question and then we'll wrap it up. Yes, please.
I was a chaplain for many years, and I've seen too many people suffer long time.
Okay.
What about the indication that you mentioned, self-administered?
Okay.
So a person would have to be conscious to do this.
Yes.
What about the rest of the people that are not conscious because of medical intervention?
Okay. Let me respond briefly to that question. It's a really good one. She points out that one must self-ingest, and what if you're unconscious? And the reality is that if you're unconscious, you cannot do this because you can't self-ingest. And before you do it, you have to confirm that this is, you know what you're doing. You know, they always ask you before you consume the medication, you understand now that if you consume this medication, you will die. Do you understand that? And if there's an indication that the person doesn't understand that, for example, if you have dementia, you cannot participate in this, even if the law passes. People with dementia cannot do it because they don't have decision-making capability. We'll continue the conversation afterwards, okay? Because we need to wrap this up. Is that all right?
My question is, what about people that are not conscious yet who die? Medical intervention has made them basically unconscious.
Well, they're not eligible for this, and no medical person can administer something that would deliberately, intentionally end their life without being charged with manslaughter or murder or something. Yeah.
Next thing you have to figure out.
Yep.
Next law.
Yep. Yep. Well, this is the first step, at least. Thank you all. I'm going to turn it over to Barbara.
Thank you very much. That hearing that Harlan was talking about in the House was on the 25th of January. I watched it live and it was 4.5 hours. So, but very good, lots of things, I mean, as you just brought up, Sandra, lots of things to think about. And, you know, we each are so individual, so it's difficult to lump it into categories and not know how many people will fit that category. So, but we'll continue our conversation here. So, all right. Thank you so much, Harlan. We will dispense with the closing hymn and we will move on to the closing words. Our closing benediction is from Lee Ann Wester. Is there such a thing as a good death? Perhaps we should ask, is there such a thing as a good life? To live a good life with love, honesty, kindness, humor, compassion. Couldn't a good death contain these qualities too? In this great circle, to come all the way around and face death as we did life. To die a good death with love, honesty, kindness, humor, compassion. To leave this world with a smile on our face and peace in our heart. Blessed be. Amen. And we'll extinguish now. Thank you, Bob. We join together in the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please rise in body or spirit, and with your hands over your heart, or holding a hand next to someone, or whatever posture is most comfortable, we sing words of blessing one to another. Bev, can you give us a little tone there? Long time sun shine upon